Welcome back to this latest episode of Japan's Top Business Interviews. I'm your host, Dr. Greg Story, the president of Dale Carnegie Training Tokyo, Japan, and my special guest today is an old friend of mine, Werner Burg, who is the representative director of Leschaco KK here in Japan.
That's right.
Well, Hans, it's great to see you after being quite a while with COVID, etc. But, we are thinking about your time in Japan. So how is it that you're running this company in Japan? How did that happen? How did you get here? What's the background for you in Japan?
First of all, thank you, Greg, for having me on your podcast. Honored to be with you and good to see you after quite a while.
Yeah, it has been a while.
My background is, I would describe myself as a working class kid. I grew up in the western part of Germany, close to the French border. That area was doing quite well till the mid-70s, I'd say, in steel and coal, and early 80s that became quite difficult economically. In my case, my father was an electrician, my mother was a saleswoman for tableware, and I went to the local high school. I graduated in 1988. Then I took an apprenticeship in a local forwarding company, but after 2 years I went to university, studying business administration, and during that time I had the opportunity to do an internship in the subsidiary of a Japanese car parts manufacturing company in Hokkaido. And for about 2-3 months, that was a great experience. I took immediately to the country, and I went back to Germany, but I wanted to work in Japan for a while at least, so I tried out several ways to get there, scholarships, but I'm not really the academic type, and my grades are way too bad for that, so I looked out for other opportunities, and finally I found a job as a German language instructor in Osaka. At that time, that was quite a big language school for English and German and French, and so I was with them for, I'd say, a year and a half.
Is this after graduation?
That's after graduation.
And then you get this your job.
That's right.
So this is your first job, basically?
That's not the first one, because the apprenticeship, that was basically the first job.
After university.
That's right, yeah.
Okay,
so, but I wanted always, I liked what I did in Germany with the forwarding business, with transportation and logistics, so I wanted to go back to that. And with the help of the local Chamber of Commerce in Japan, the Japanese Chamber of Commerce, they were helping me, and I found some companies who were willing to talk to me, and in late 1998, I joined the Japanese subsidiary of a German smaller-sized freight forwarder. And I was with them for 10 years until the owners sold the company. And then I joined to Leschaco in May 2009, and that's how I came here.
It's quite a long time with Leschaco.
That's right,
an extended period of time. Yeah.
That's right, yeah. And the businesses were similar, so mainly chemical logistics. So I like that, and I still do. Yeah.
So interesting. When you were in that first company, what was your role there?
The role was in the beginning. It was not so easy. I was the link between the head office and the local team. Team was very small. I think at that time 3 or 4 people. They were operationally very good, but the communication with the head office was very, very poor, so to say. This was way before emails and MS Teams and so on. So we did everything by phone calls and telefax. Anyway, my role was to smoothen that, so to make each other understand, and also to increase the business. So, that was the initial role.
When you changed jobs, what was the new role you went into with Leschaco?
I joined here as a manager for some part of the business, for the tank container business. We have what we call a competence center here. We coordinate all activities in Asia together with our partners in other Asian countries. That was the first role, and then I took over in 2011 the role as managing director, because my predecessor, he was retiring.
So let's see, you joined in 2011.
9.
9, and 2 years later, you were the managing director.
Yeah, that was the idea actually right from the start, because I had also been at the previous company. After a while, I was also representative director.
Oh, okay. So,
Yeah.
oh, okay. Well, that's an important piece of the puzzle. So,
That's, yeah, okay. I
in that
understand,
first
yeah.
company, that was probably. I'm looking for your first experiences of leading. That's
Okay,
what I'm
okay.
searching for. When did that?
Okay.
When did that happen in the first company?
Okay, in the first company that happened, I couldn't tell you the exact date or time, but it developed after a while, after the team accepted me as their kind of leader, and also after the head office accepted me as some important part of their team who could help working together with the head office successfully.
So it's a very small team.
It's a very small team at that time.
And
was a very
so
small
for
team.
them, I guess they're working with you as a colleague.
Yes.
And now you're the boss, right?
Yeah, that's right.
So what was, in your probably your first real management role, I guess?
Yeah, that's right. That's
okay.
correct.
This
yeah.
first management role is in
Yeah.
Japan, right? With
Yeah.
a Japanese team, presumably.
That's right. Mhm.
So what was challenging about being the leader? Going from being a colleague to being the leader?
The challenge was actually the expectations each side had. The head office and the Japanese team, they had, of course, different expectations. What helped me a lot was the Japanese language. I learned in that time a lot, because in the office in Tokyo, we were mainly communicating in Japanese. So I went to language schools in the evening, and I personally, I would say the language skill is helpful. It's not a must. So I have seen you have many distinguished guests on your lists. I'm sure many of them, they have great success here and lead very successfully. So language, Japanese language skill is a tool like any other tool. So if you are maybe not so good at communicating in general, it helps you when you have Japanese language skills. So I consider that for me personally, that was a great help. And that helped also getting me accepted by the people. Yeah.
And what else is challenging, though, for becoming a new leader? I mean, it's your first leadership job, right?
That's right, yes.
So I'm sure they didn't give you any training for being the leader. They
That's
said,
right.
you are the leader, Hans,
Yeah.
go do it. You know?
Yeah.
So what was sort of some of the early things you thought back, okay,
The
I could have done that better, or I didn't know what I was doing at that time? Or,
Okay. So in the beginning, I was trying to supervise them. And basically, or frankly speaking, I was looking for mistakes. And that didn't, of course, really help either of us. So I started to get more into the daily business. I abolished that approach, and then we went out together to see customers, to see our business partners, our technical people we had to help us with our daily work. And I got really involved in the day-to-day business.
So how did you notice, or how did you know that looking for people's mistakes all the time is not actually working? How did you find that, this is probably not a good idea?
I was also not satisfied with myself, because this is not something I really like to do from top down, to look at other people and see what they're doing, and if something doesn't work, to criticize them. Sometimes that is necessary, but I still don't find that the right approach.
Were people quitting? Were people complaining?
Nobody quit.
Pushing back?
So they were still giving me some leeway, so to say. And I'm not someone who is yelling around or screaming, but I was probably quite annoying in the beginning. So, but I'm grateful that I changed that approach quite quickly, and that worked. Yeah.
And so you found that when you were actually, I guess, leading from the front, you're in the trenches with them, you're going to the clients, you're going, you're dealing with the clients' issues, etc. They see, okay, he's with us, so that was probably easier.
Yes, especially when you mentioned that, when we had, because in logistics, things sometimes go wrong. So you have delays or damages or, so you have to apologize to customers, which especially in Japan is quite important. So I would usually then join the colleagues, whoever was in charge of that particular customer, and we go there together and explain things and also apologize. That was something I also learned or had to learn quite early on, that an apology here doesn't mean the same as, for example, in Germany, where in Germany or Western countries you take on some kind of liability or it's a kind of admission of guilt. But here it's something you acknowledge that you caused some inconvenience to your customer or business partner. So it's a different mindset. And
they're not going to take you to court on your admission of guilt type of problem, right? But they expect culturally you to say you're sorry and look like you're sorry too.
Yeah, look like you're sorry and you do something about it, that it's going better next time. That's an important difference, I think.
It's a big difference, isn't it?
It's a big difference, it is. Yeah.
What were some other things you found challenging as a new leader?
In the beginning, also gaining trust. I was quite young at that time. I felt some sense of entitlement through my employment. I had a fancy title, but also when I called customers, it was or potential customers. My Japanese ability was quite poor at that time, but I got really quickly appointments. And I was very motivated by that, and I thought, I'm doing great here, and we will improve our business quickly. But when you realize quickly as well that Japanese, they are quite open to getting information, exchange information, what they Joho Kokan, that's quite easy. But to gain the trust, to be a long-term business partner, that is quite difficult. And
this company was located here in Tokyo?
That was also located in Tokyo, yes.
Okay, right,
yes.
Right. So, when you look back and you think, okay, you had that initial experience in the first company, and then you get promoted to, or you join Leschaco and you become the head of Leschaco very quickly. What things, because you're a bigger team here, I guess, compared to
It's a bigger team, that's right, yeah.
Right? And you're coming from outside.
Yes.
And you haven't been a colleague, you're just coming in from outside. What was challenging about that, coming in from outside and becoming the leader?
So the size of the company was, in the beginning, quite a challenge. More people. They had also different kind of business, partially. From the interaction with the colleagues here, from the beginning on, that was quite good actually, because I came from the same industry, so they acknowledged I have already also a network of my own. I can bring in additional business partners, service providers. That was quite good. But again, the expectation from the head office and from the local colleagues, there was again some work to do, which had been a challenge in the beginning. But
so how does that work too? Because sometimes when you're the representative here and you're that bridge between headquarters and the local staff, and things work differently here. And when you're sitting outside of Japan, you can't imagine that things would work like that. It's just not in your history, it's not in your experience, you couldn't, even your imagination, right? And then you're trying to explain, well, actually, no, Japan's different, or Japan does it a different way. How would that go? Because then you're new to them as well. And here you're talking about, well, Japan doesn't do it like that, or this isn't going to work in Japan. That's also quite challenging to have build a trust with headquarters as well.
That's right, yes.
So how did that go?
That took time. I'm personally a very patient character, so we had lengthy phone conversations, and I was lucky. My superior, he's also a board of director member here, so he comes regularly to Japan. He kind of understands the circumstances, but in detail, I had to do a lot of explanation. And that took time. But again, my background with the previous company, the same industry, chemical logistics, that helped me to grow in that role. And I had in the beginning also the advantage that the previous managing director, he was with me for I think about a year still to guide me into that role, and that of course helped as well.
That helps a lot, doesn't
yes.
it? Yeah. And so what have you found in terms of getting the team engaged? Because when you look at these surveys, engagement surveys for Japan, and when you look at the company surveys. Different companies do surveys. I don't know if you guys do the surveys or not, but in my experience, APAC's always at the bottom, and usually the bottom of APAC is Japan, right? So there's always seems to be this big discrepancy around how engaged are the Japanese, you know. But what's been your experience with getting people engaged in their jobs?
I agree with you that it's in general it's more difficult here. People are probably less forthcoming with ideas or with engagement. So I think it's important to create an atmosphere and an environment of engagement, also an opportunity.
How do you do that?
I think you make everybody comfortable to do so. So, for example, for suggestions, if you want to have suggestions, if you want to have some social activity, first of all, you participate yourself in these activities. You make them comfortable to approach you. So, for example, my door is always open. I try to work in a smaller group. Initially, that makes also usually people more comfortable to speak out or to be active in any way. And if we have come to a decision about an engagement, it's important also to follow through in that regard. So to be, so to say, authentic also in the approach. You know.
So when you're working in small groups, so you've got yourself as a leader, and then you've got a level of leaders also, your direct reports, right? So if you're going below your direct reports to their teams, is there any hesitancy on their part about that? They don't expect you to be talking to their people, you should be talking to them, or those sorts of conflicts can arise?
They can arise, that's right. This is something probably we have to improve here, because I was or still am, I think of myself as hands-on. So I talk to everybody, everybody can talk to me. It's not always the right way, I think, if you have a certain hierarchy in the company, be it also very, very flat, but you have people in charge of a certain group, so you shouldn't take care of everything, because that diminishes their responsibility. But in general, I think I'm very approachable, and also from a point of my reaction, I'm very calm. I listen to everybody. I don't get upset when somebody disagrees. So I think this is all very important to encourage this.
Well, that's interesting, because when you say when people disagree, because even getting people to disagree with you in Japan is not a given. You know?
It's not a given.
So when I hear that,
yes.
I say to myself, well, that's good.
Yeah.
If people feel comfortable enough to disagree with the boss, that says a lot about what's going on here. How did you find? I mean, that couldn't have been like that from day one. I imagine.
No, that's right.
It takes time to build that type
Yes.
of environment where people can disagree with the boss. So
That's right.
How did you go about building that environment?
Again, here I have to come back to the language issue. So because we have also a lot of meetings in English. We had just today we had a town hall, what they call town hall meetings. They are very popular now. Was all done in English, and at the end there was no question from anybody. So I feel the employees, the colleagues are more confident, more comfortable to ask or to argue even in their local language, and especially if when it's a smaller group. So that helped a lot. And again, I think it's important not to push that away in case of disagreement, but to deal with it. And I mean, you don't personally need to agree to that point of view, but it's important to deal with it and to look from various angles at something. Otherwise, you won't get new ideas, and you won't get anybody to give you their opinion, their point of view, which is a pity, I think.
Well, that's another point too. You know, if you've got people who are engaged, then they care about the company.
That's
right.
right.
If you're not engaged, company does better, doesn't do better, you don't care, right? You just pick up my salary, that's it. So the first step to getting people to have some creativity or innovation into the company to make it better, first step, they've got to be engaged. So if you've got them engaged, that's good. Then what have you found has worked well to get people to come up with ideas, to be creative?
I think it's good to have at least one or two who have this kind of already role to speak out. We have a few employees. Others are more hesitant, but when they see someone else is also confident to speak up, this helps a lot. What's also important is if somebody has a good idea and you say, oh, this is a good idea, let's do it that way, it's important to follow through and to change something.
So what they see is their idea being implemented.
That's right, the
so
implementation.
They feel, oh, they took my idea seriously. It
Yes.
wasn't just, giving me some, words that don't mean anything.
That's right, yes. Which can be difficult depending on what you want to change. For example, if it's some IT issue, some application where you want to change something, this is, of course, takes time. You might need a service provider to do that. Other things are more easier. We had, for example, a good example might be we had our rules of employment here. We had a review in 2016-17, and I took two long-term employees from different backgrounds and engaged them in that process. So we went through the old version, and then we discussed what would be a good revision, what would be good to have in these rules of employment, because they had been very in use for a long time, and we needed some revision, and they came up with many ideas. We had also the help of a lawyer. But anyway, there was a good process of engagement, and they saw this also implemented in this new version. Which
What about when you don't agree?
when we don't agree, it's more difficult, obviously.
How do you handle that? Someone comes up passionate about an idea.
Yes.
Maybe it's something that's just technically not possible, financially not possible, philosophically not possible. There's any number of reasons you're not going to go for it. But how do you handle those situations?
I mean, in an ideal world, they would trust you because they are convinced you make the right decision for the company and in the long term also for them. And then they follow through with it despite agreeing. That would be an ideal way. If it doesn't go that way, there is potential for some frustration, obviously. But it's a good point. I have no clear answer to that. So the worst thing I think is not so much the disagreement, but I have seen ideas accepted, and then we couldn't follow through with them for several reasons. That I think that does the bigger damage than rather than having some idea which you reject for whatever reason. Finally, they understand it, or usually they do. But the other way around, they have a good idea, you say it's a good idea, but it's not implemented. That has the bigger potential for frustration, in my experience.
Do you have any particular methodology you use around brainstorming to generate ideas in the team?
We do meetings, open agenda. We have the whiteboard, which we use. Nothing actually in particular. We tried also group plays and some escape room, more like social interaction, but that hasn't really quite worked out so well. So and now recently with the COVID going on, we had also completely abolished that, and basically. So what we do right now, we have smaller group meetings where we discuss very openly, without certain agenda points, but not with some predetermined outcome.
Are most people working at home, or they're here in the office?
We have still most people working from home,
Right.
due to the still high number of cases of new infections, and it's well accepted. I personally do not like it too much. I'm more of a personal engagement person, and I'm not really so fond of it. But I see it's necessary. It has worked quite well. I was in the beginning quite skeptic, but again here I have to say, also thanks to the engagement of most of the staff, or many of the staff, giving the ideas, technical solutions, backup solutions, how we can deal with it, bringing the computers forth and back from home to here, and buying some smaller monitors and small printers, and of course the online we can access our systems from everywhere. That has helped a lot, but also the input from the employees, especially for technical issues, for issues with customers.
How many people altogether now?
We have 2 locations. Osaka is 4 to 5, and here we are about 36, I say.
So it's quite a big group.
Yeah, it's
dispersed,
40 plus employees here. Yeah.
Are you doing business with Japan? Do you really know how things work? Japan Business Mastery provides the answers. Do you have the right networks and know how to create them? Do you know how to get on the same wavelength with Japanese buyers? Do you know what being trustworthy looks like from the Japanese perspective? Japan Business Mastery is based on more than 30 years' experience in Japan and will become your go-to guide. Want to succeed in Japan? Buy Japan Business Mastery now. If you want to be successful as a leader, do the Leadership Training for Managers course. All companies need people who can both manage and lead. Leading people screams out for real skills in communication, dealing with all different types of people, being excellent at innovation, planning, delegation, handling mistakes, doing performance reviews really well, and inspiring and motivating the team. Do the Leadership Training for Managers course now in either Japanese or English. Personally, I find that getting things done is that little bit harder because you have to talk to more people.
That's right, yes.
If we have a conversation, I can't say, hey, we just had a discussion about blah, blah. I've actually got to ring them, or you can never get them on the phone.
That's right.
Email them. It just seems to slow everything down compared to before. I felt
that's right. Yes.
In the office, is grab people. Now you can't do that. Yeah.
So when I joined initially, I think we have been 12 or 13. So the company has grown
quite a lot.
Grown in the past 10 years, quite a lot. So, but I agree with you. It's more difficult to talk to everybody and also to engage with everybody at the same level. That's difficult. So I try my best, but especially now with the home office, that's quite a challenge.
Yeah.
And I hope we can come back to some more personal relationship in the near future.
What about trust? Japan is a country where trust is incredibly important. Trust is important everywhere, but I think Japan sort of takes it to another level in many ways. What have you found works well to build trust?
I think be authentic, so don't pretend to be someone you are not. I come back to my initial mentioning when I said I was looking for mistakes, but I didn't really like it myself, so I took a different approach. So be authentic, be maybe not always predictable, but transparent, so they can understand your decisions easier. Also, share credit is important. I think that's also something I make sure I do.
How do you do that? When you say share credit, how someone deserves to have something in the way of recognition, how would you share the credit for that?
I would mention that at a given opportunity, if they are present or not, doesn't matter. So, for example, if I get some acknowledgement from the head office, we had a good financial result, or we had gained a new business, I would always make sure to mention certain people who had also been involved and assisted in some way, given their help, and that's also thanks to them that we have achieved this goal or this result. What I also like to mention, you make sure on the other hand also to take responsibility together if something goes wrong. So I usually, when we have a larger complaint of some kind, I make sure I go with them to see the customer or business partner. And again, here the apology, not as an admission of guilt, but you acknowledge that they are in trouble and you are in some way involved in that by selecting a poor subcontractor, or which we don't do, of course, but some circumstances are maybe leading to their difficulties, and you are in some way involved in that without being really responsible. We have a lot of delays now through to this turmoil in supply chain, so we have to explain that, and always sorry for that, but at the moment it's like this, but we could probably choose a different shipping line, or so show also some ways how to get around this problem in the future. But again, it's important, I think, to face this together, this difficult situation with the customer. And this also gains you trust with the customer. They also will acknowledge that, not only internally with your team. This is also true to the external side. And when you really do that and stick to it, you come probably out stronger in the relationship as you had been before. This is also my experience, that this can improve in relationship when you take responsibility together and try to improve the process or the service, what you do for them.
What about culture? In your case, you've joined, from one company in Japan to another company in Japan. Probably haven't spent that much time in the headquarters, I suppose.
No, that's right.
So you've got a certain, for any organization, you've got a certain headquarters culture.
That's right.
And then you've got a branch culture. And then you've got a German, I guess it's German headquarter culture. And you've got a Japan local culture. And you've got then the company culture. You've got many layers of culture here.
That's right, yes.
How do you go about building the culture that you want in this company? What have you done that works there for you?
So I go back a little. I had the two companies I have been for a long time now with Leschaco. Both have been privately owned, family ownership. Both owners have had made sure to visit all the countries, also Japan, frequently, regularly, to know the employees and to make sure they are in touch with the local subsidiaries. So there was already some form of culture or understanding of the head office in that regard, that it's family owned, that people are approachable. That was a good point to start with. What I do locally to get a certain culture, again, my personal thing, I make sure there is no, even in disagreement, there is no yelling or blaming or shaming. I'm always also very calm. So
if someone's blaming or yelling or shaming,
well, what
do you do about that?
I reject that, and
but how do you handle it? So, for example, if there's a meeting and someone says, "Look, it's your fault, your section screwed that up. That's why we got this problem." If you get that sort of public disagreement or picking people out for criticism, how do you handle it?
So I say we are here to discuss this problem. I understand there are somebody might be at fault for this, but we are not here now to blame that. We are here to look at the problem and try to solve it. And after that, we can talk about who is actually being responsible and what we do about that. So I try to, because usually the first focus is to solve the problem, and that it's not always helpful to look for somebody guilty for that problem. So,
what about the person who's doing the yelling or the blaming or the shaming? What do you do about that person?
I'm very clear on that I do not accept that in a meeting or in the office at all. And if there is some ongoing disagreement, I would take them out and talk to them outside so that this is not going on and get other colleagues traction for quite an amount of time. We had that on occasion, but I think I can take off that in my way quite okay.
I guess in logistics business, there's so many things that go wrong. Highly stressful, a lot of money tied up. In
That's
the
right.
vagaries of weather, wars. Embargoes, shutdowns, lockdowns.
That's right. Yes.
Pandemics. I mean, there's a lot can go wrong. So
That's right.
It's very stressful. So we're talking about culture. What are some other things you found that work well with culture?
Okay. So let me mention again our head office. We see some generational change now. The it's a private ownership, and the children of the owner are both now, his daughter and his son are now both in the management board. And especially the son has taken quite a leadership role both in IT but also in HR. And in that regard, done a lot for development, HR, employee development. And they are doing many, many projects, among them also a culture project. So how is the culture perceived by the employees? And we have many, many activities in that regard. So, for example, there are surveys. You can take part in online meetings. And there is, of course, a culture which is desired, a flexible service provider, privately owned, quick decision making, but still on the top in the top of the game. Locally, I try to adapt to that. So again, here, trying to engage people to come to quick decisions if something makes sense, if somebody has a good idea to implement that. And also, again, with the interaction of each other's interaction, to make sure there is always respectful interaction, even in disagreement. And yes, as well as welcoming new people aboard, that we respect also their career background, even if they do not come from us, even if they are not. I found that a bit challenging here. Maybe not so much for Western companies, but as you know, there are Japanese companies who have a different culture. They would not hire people from outside. So they just
mid-career hires not welcomed in a lot of cases. Yeah.
So I guess that is quite challenging for some people to accept someone as a superior who had not been with the company but is just coming from somewhere else. And I also try to encourage that by supporting the newcomers. And if there's some explanation necessary, I also do that, so that it's clear who has which role. That is not always easy. That is quite a challenge.
Japan, I notice that for Japanese particularly, they really like to have the role clarity.
Yes.
Very refined and very crystal clear. They don't like it when it's a bit vague.
Yes.
They really want it sharp.
That's right.
Yeah. I guess that comes back to controlling the realm of your responsibility.
That's right, yes.
Don't have it broad, have it narrow where possible.
That's right, yes, yes.
Just on that, what have you found? I mean, I've noticed with my team that job definitions or responsibilities, clarity, very important for them. They really want to know exactly what am I going to be held responsible, accountable for. The smaller the better. But as an Australian, I don't think like that much. My Aussie mind works in a different way. Like, it's not that big a deal, But for them, it's a big deal. How have you found that with your team? Are they similar to that?
As the company grows bigger, it's getting more difficult, and we need more clarity. I mentioned in the beginning, I'm quite hands-on. I think of myself as hands-on. So also my job, I'm involved in everything when I feel it's necessary. And we have there is not so much work. How do you call that? Work. For example, somebody is in charge of documents, somebody is in charge of operations, somebody is in charge of customer service. So
work separation of tasks.
Work separation of tasks. That has not been really implemented thoroughly here. We still have people in charge of a certain customer, and they do basically everything. Which I feel is, for the customer, it's a very good solution. If they have a problem or they want to do something or have a question, they deal with one person.
Yeah. And the customer expects that, I think. They see that person is the company.
That's right, yes.
That's my guy or gal in the company.
Yes.
Yeah.
So that has worked very well for us, and has worked very well for us in the past. But as I said, as the company grows bigger, we require a better, more clear setup and also set of responsibilities. And there we have still some way to go, so to say. But I'm also working on that together with the colleagues.
So if you're thinking about someone who's outside of Japan, they've not worked in Japan before, they're going to be sent to Japan, and you're going to give them some advice. What would be some advice you'd give them?
Again, I mentioned out of my experience what has worked for me. I'd say to someone who intends to stay here for longer, learn the language. That is important.
How much is long?
How much is long? I'd say anything more than 5 years, probably. So myself, it took me about 3 years to get to an okay level while using it a lot during work. So mostly no English other than calling the head office or emailing with the head office. So I'd say anything over 5 years is worth trying to learn the language.
Do you ever find, though, just in that, a lot of people who join international firms want to use English,
Yes.
and then we wind up make Japanese the language, right?
Yes.
But they actually join because they want to use English, and use
That's
their
right.
English. They've
Yes.
studied overseas, or they've been working hard on their language skills,
Yes.
right? And we turn, we're going to speak in Japanese. Like, well, so do you ever have that sort of issue around, trying to have an international environment with English for people who've got that aspiration?
We had actually people joining us. I think that was their initial motivation, and sadly it didn't work out for both sides because they didn't really take to the logistics
The business.
and well, we weren't so happy with their performance, and also they were not so happy with the lack of English communication opportunity, so to say. So. Usually, of course, we are looking for people who are very, able in English, have a good ability to speak English, communicate English. That's of course very, very important for us, but not to that degree that they come to the company because they want to speak English. Then we are not really the right place here. Yes.
Because when I was working previously in a small group, small teams, we used to do. I'm trying to think. I think it was Monday and Wednesday was English, and Tuesday and Thursday was Japanese, and Friday was whatever you like. To try and get some balance, because I'm trying to improve my Japanese. Obviously, I want to speak in Japanese, but they also want to speak in English. So we did it like that.
Okay.
Did a half and half, and one day is your choice. You pick whichever one you like. So we did it like that. But what other advice would you have for people who are coming here?
I'd say also, again, for me, that had worked quite well. Be patient, but persistent. So don't give up.
How about on the patient side? Because you've got headquarters who are usually not particularly patient.
That's right, yes.
Being patient.
I can sign off on that. That's right, yes.
Yeah, you're being patient, they're not patient.
Yeah.
So often you find yourself sort of squeezed a bit there, and your ability to be patient can be a problem sometimes from a headquarters point of view. How do you deal with that?
Can be a problem, but I would say I explain that to them, and I try my best to have the time I need with the team here. The first company, again, coming back to that, the pressure to gain new business was quite high. And it didn't work that way. We were visiting more and more customers. I wrote call reports every day. Again, that was all done with fax. So I was in the evening, I was doing all the faxes to the head office, and they would read these reports and say, "Oh, they have so many. There's so many opportunities. Go on, get the business, And I get calls every day from my superior, and he would say, "You have to get the business." But we do our best, but it doesn't work that way. It takes time here, and we will get opportunities. They will ask for a freight offer or whatever in due time, and then we can pick up from that. But first of all, we have to work with them. We give them information. We visit them.
Build a relationship
Till you get some trust,
Yeah.
and otherwise it's not going to be successful. And I think they understood that. It took some time, but
You had to educate them.
I had to educate them. Yes, that's right. Yes.
So, what else should someone who's new think about?
So what else I would say is, again, the ability to apologize is important.
That's an interesting point, isn't it? Because when you've grown up in a very law-based business world where the lawyers in the company are always saying, don't admit to anything, and so you've been sort of trained like that to be very careful about what you actually admit to. And as you say, then being here where they're not going to take you to court necessarily, but they are unhappy with how things are going, and they expect you to show you appreciate their problem genuinely, legitimately, and have integrity about that, and of course fix it. So, yeah, that type of thing when you say, apologising, I guess there's perhaps a bit of a psychological gap sometimes that, well, why do I have to apologise?
That's a good point, yes.
Why do I have to apologise? You go and apologise,
Yeah.
why am I doing that? Right? So what do you think? What's your advice there?
My advice would be, together with the apology, you have to be prepared to give a lot of information. Coming back to our business, when we have a damage on some shipment, which is a good example, or some serious delay, so it's of course not enough to go there and say, we're very sorry. So you have to bring valid information, substantial information. Why had this occurred? How can we avoid this in the future? What can we do to help to avoid this in the future? What can the customer do to avoid to have that in the future? This law-based background, you come from Western countries where everything, the lawyers try to nail everything in the contract. When you see contracts here in Japanese, when there is some part, mostly there it says if there's a disagreement or some problem, we try to solve it together, and it's something in that fashion. And that is really, I feel, is the spirit here.
Also, it's interesting too for me. I mean, if we're talking huge money and really big business, okay, that's probably a different thing.
It's a different thing, yes.
In normal business, though, even if you have a contract, if the Japanese side's situation has changed, they expect you to change the contract. Okay, you sign the contract in one situation, well, the situation's changed, so I don't want to follow that contract anymore. We need a new contract, So that sort of expectation, I often think to myself, well, what value in small business anyway, I'm not talking about huge business, billions or something like that, but you often wonder what's the point of the contract anyway, because they don't follow it. If it doesn't suit them to follow it, they say, well, we've got to change it. So, okay.
That's
so
right.
the value or the ironclad nature of the contract here is quite different.
It's very different, that's right, yes.
quite
So the relationship is more important, far more important.
Yeah. If you really want to have a long-term relationship with us, forget about the contract. We've got the contract here, between us. Yeah. What are some other things you can think about that would help someone coming here?
It takes time, so be patient in that regard. When I was the first few years, I was always surprised when you go into a meeting to have some business discussion, how many people would show up. So, and you are thinking, we are talking about some transport, logistics issue here. Why is someone coming from the accounting department? Or why does someone come from the quality department? But after a while, you get the idea, because there's financial transactions involved, because if they change the service provider, always quality guys, their alarm bells go on. So I found that interesting, and in the long run, it probably makes sense to get at an early stage all stakeholders, all people involved quickly into the process, so that you don't have any bad surprises in the end when somebody raises a hand at the end of the project when you're about to come to an agreement, saying, "Oh, you have to overlook this.
You forgot about this."
And we can't do this way or that way. So it's very time consuming. But I think again, for our business and also for the customers, for us, this has worked okay. So but it takes time. I mean, I'm talking then years probably If it's some larger business, some larger account, it takes a year or two. I can remember one business we got that took up to 3 years to get.
Which
them
headquarters
bought.
would never understand.
No, they didn't
With
understand
3
it at
years,
all.
what?
Yeah. Well, what are you doing?
You didn't
Why
get the
isn't
business,
this,
you lost it.
fixed already? So what?
I think that harmonization too, as you say, having stakeholders in the room, hearing directly from you, they're sort of fixing their internal problems on the spot, aren't they? Whereas we in the West might have just the two people. Then on their side, the person on their side then has to go and harmonize with all the other people inside the organization to get behind the decision that's already been taken, right? So it's a bit of a different approach. But,
Yes.
Yeah. And
But sorry to interrupt.
Yeah,
I
no,
think
go
that's a good point also with the point of view of engagement. Maybe it's not voluntarily, but they are at least in the process from the beginning and have a say, even if the decision might be already taken by somebody who is in that position to take that decision. But at least they feel
some ownership of the
some
process,
ownership.
yeah?
Yes, early on. So that's probably a good thing.
So, Hans, if we think about leadership, what's your definition of leadership?
I think if you look at a leader, if you go back to the initial meaning of the word, somebody or some people that follow you, why do they follow you? So they might follow you out of respect for your position, for your title, out of a sense of duty for towards you or the company. This might be okay, but it's a bit like in the military. Others might follow you because they respect you, because they like you, because they have some empathy, which might be okay as well. I'd prefer someone follows me because they trust me, or they are convinced, even if they disagree, that I make the right decision for the company and finally for them. That would be the best way a leader can act. That's my feeling. And why would they trust me? Again, here, what's required to gain the trust? Be authentic, be transparent, share credit, and take responsibility together if things go wrong. That would make, I think, a good leader.
Okay, very good. Well, Hans, thank you very much for today.
Thank you for the opportunity. Enjoyed it very much.
Yeah, me too. Thank you.
Thank you.
And please join us again for our next episode of Japan's top business interviews.